Have you heard the latest? Big developments unfolding right now in Abuja, and you'll want to stick around for every detail. But before we dive in, please like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future updates. Great, let's get into the story. So here's what's going on. The prominent activist and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore has been released from detention, along with the lawyer Aloy Ejimakor and several others. But what happens next is what's really interesting. Here's the background. Sowore was arrested after he made a visit to the Nnamdi Kanu trial venue, tied to the Free Nnamdi KanuNow protest, which itself has stirred national attention. He and Ejimakor, as well as Kanu's brother, Prince Emmanuel Kanu, were among a group detained for allegedly disturbing public peace during the protest held on October 20. Now to the release. A magistrate's court in Kuje Magistrate Court, Abuja, granted bail for them at 500,000 each, plus sureties, and put additional conditions in place. Submission of a valid NIN, tax clearance certificate, and passports. After meeting those conditions, they were released from Kuje Prison and Correctional Center on Monday, October 27. So you might ask, okay, they are free. What's the real twist? That's where this story gets interesting. Here are the things to watch. Public perception and momentum. By staging that protest, and then by being freed, Sowore and the others have energized a certain cross-section of Nigerians who feel strongly about government accountability and the rule of law. This momentum could lead to bigger mobilizations, more vocal activism, legal and political implications. Their freedom doesn't mean the case is over. They were granted bail. The charges still exist. The fact that the legal system had to set bail with conditions reflects something significant. The state is under pressure. How the case proceeds and how the government and security apparatus handle follow-up will matter a lot. What comes next for Kanu and his trial? With Sowore visiting Kanu's trial, the spotlight is on the larger case of Nnamdi Kanu and the group behind that protest. The next moves by the court, legal teams, and government agencies will shape how this chapter unfolds. The trial in question has already had adjournments, impacts on activism and dissent. What message does this send to activists, legal practitioners, and everyday Nigerians who feel disempowered? On one hand, you can argue that the system responded. On the other hand, questions remain. Why were they detained in the first place? Under what conditions? And what happens if they breach bail? The uncertainty is part of the twist. Government and security response. The way the authorities handle the release and what follows will tell us a lot. Will there be further arrests? Will there be attempts to suppress or co-opt the narrative? Will the state use this as a precedent? These are the immediate what happens next questions. Now, Dr. Sam, here's why I think this story is especially compelling for you and for Nigerians. The intersection of activism, law, and politics in a country that is arguably still grappling with basic questions of freedom of expression and assembly. And because you engage with this channel, you're part of witnessing this moment. Let's also draw a related point. When activists or dissenters are arrested and then released, often the attention fades quickly, but the underlying issues remain. So one smart move is to keep asking, what happens after the cameras leave? What structural changes, if any, will be made? For instance, will there be reforms in how protests are handled? Will legal safeguards for activists be strengthened? Or will this become another headline and fade away? And yes, if you're enjoying this kind of news breakdown, please like this video, subscribe, and share it so your friends can stay informed too. Okay, so what are the potential scenarios coming up? I'll walk you through 3 plausible ones. Scenario A. The momentum builds. Sowore, Ejimakor, and the others use their release to amplify the cause, organize further activism, media coverage intensifies, the trial for Kanu becomes a lightning rod, and maybe some meaningful reforms or high-profile demands follow. That's the optimistic path. Scenario B. A plateau. They are released, media attention peaks for a short while, then fades. The trial proceeds quietly, government does minimal response, activism scales down. The issues linger but without major breakthrough. Scenario C. Crackdown. The state decides to reassert control, arrest further protesters, extend charges, maybe tighten laws. The release becomes a tactical move to ease pressure temporarily rather than a true win. This is the scenario activists fear. Which of those is most likely? I'd lean between A and B, maybe leaning B given current constraints. But the wild card here is public engagement and social media pressure. What can you as a viewer do? Stay informed, follow this story, verify updates, ask questions. When someone says they were released, dig into the conditions, the charges, and what follow-up there is, and hold actors accountable. Comment, share, discuss. Now, let's talk about what's likely happening behind the scenes. After Sowore, Aloy Ejimakor, and others were granted bail, several sources close to the case revealed that their legal teams are preparing to challenge what they called unlawful arrest and detention without due process. This means the story might not just stop at their release. It could turn into a full legal battle between the state and these activists. Sowore, as we all know, is not new to this. Since his Nnamdi RevolutionNow movement in 2019, he's been arrested multiple times, but he keeps pushing for what he calls a freer Nigeria. That persistence has made him both a symbol and a target. Now, with this latest release, he has already hinted that he won't back down. He reportedly said, "You can detain the body, but not the spirit of freedom." That kind of statement already tells you he's gearing up for something bigger. Aloy Ejimakor, on the other hand, is Nnamdi Kanu's special counsel. His arrest during the protest raised a lot of eyebrows because, legally speaking, a lawyer has every right to represent or support his client in court without intimidation. Many human rights observers have pointed out that detaining a lawyer representing a politically sensitive client could raise questions about fairness in the justice system. So, this may also become a topic of legal advocacy and national debate. Now here's where it gets more layered, and I want you to listen carefully. The same day they were released, several youth groups in Abuja and Enugu reportedly held peaceful gatherings, celebrating what they called a moral victory. They were chanting slogans about freedom, democracy, and the importance of civil rights. That kind of spontaneous reaction shows how emotionally charged this issue is. Nigerians are watching, and they're speaking out. But there's another side to the story. Some government sources and commentators have warned that while protests are allowed, there must be law and order. They argue that security agencies acted based on intelligence to prevent what they called a potential breach of peace. So, as usual, we see that back and forth tension between state security and civic freedom, something Nigeria has wrestled with for decades. Now, let's connect this to something even broader. If you look at global patterns, not just Nigeria, activists who face detention often come out with stronger followings. Think about people like Nelson Mandela, or even recent cases around Africa. Each arrest seems to amplify their message rather than silence it. The same might happen here. After Sowore's release, his social media numbers jumped, and hashtags related to his cause began trending again on X, formerly Twitter. That shows the story is far from over. Now, let's be real, there's also the political angle. Sowore has always positioned himself as a voice for ordinary Nigerians, especially the youth. But his critics sometimes say he's too confrontational or too radical. So this new episode might either win him more sympathy or push some moderates away. What happens next depends largely on how he and his team handle this momentum. Will they turn it into a structured movement, or will it fade after the social media buzz? Only time will tell. And about Aloy Ejimakor, his next steps will be closely watched too. As Nnamdi Kanu's lawyer, his freedom could also mean renewed energy for Kanu's legal team. Remember, Kanu's case is still pending, and every small legal victory matters. There are reports that Ejimakor might file a motion regarding the conditions of Kanu's detention, citing this recent incident as evidence of state pressure. If that happens, the conversation around fair trial rights will flare up again. Before I move forward, let me just remind you, if you're following this gist and you want to keep getting verified updates, please like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This platform is where we break the noise down and bring you what's really happening without bias. Now, looking at the social side again, Nigerians are reacting. Across WhatsApp groups, on TikTok, and on X, you can already see people debating whether the arrests were justified or political. Some say it's part of a pattern to discourage activism. Others argue that the law must always come first, no matter who is involved. And this divide, this argument, is exactly why such stories matter. They make us question what kind of country we want to build. Another twist here is how this plays into Nigeria's image internationally. You see, the international press has already picked up the story. A few outlets abroad have published short pieces describing Sowore and Ejimakor's release as a test of Nigeria's democratic maturity. That phrase, democratic maturity, keeps coming up. It basically means, how does a democracy handle dissent? Does it crush it, or does it listen and learn from it? For a 20-minute breakdown, we'd also have to touch on how this ties into next year's political climate. Because don't forget, local elections and policy debates are coming. Issues like human rights, press freedom, and civil participation will be on the table again. And if Sowore decides to re-enter mainstream politics, which he might, this release could be his way back into national attention. And to be fair, one cannot discuss this story without talking about the legal system itself. Many Nigerians have been asking, why does it take protests, social media pressure, or viral videos before justice starts to move? Why does bail for activists always become a national topic? These are questions ordinary people keep raising because they reflect a deeper frustration that the legal process feels selective. It works fast for some, slow for others. Now imagine what could happen if this case leads to real reform. Imagine a Nigeria where protest rights are respected, where activists can speak up without fear, and where the government sees criticism as part of democracy, not an attack. That's the kind of country many young Nigerians say they want to live in, and it's part of what this whole Sowore Ejimakor saga represents. Before we close this part, remember this. What happens next isn't just about those who were arrested or freed, it's about the message the system sends. If they are re-arrested, it will raise new alarms. If the case quietly disappears, it might set a new precedent for civil rights. Either way, the nation is watching closely. Alright, my people, I'll pause this segment here so we don't make the video too long. But trust me, there's still more to unpack. When we continue, I'll break down the behind-the-scenes politics, what Nnamdi Kanu's camp is planning next, and how this whole drama might affect Nigeria's democracy moving forward.